Okay, hello everybody. Today we are here at a private airfield Oscar Golf 20 Fairways Airport flying the Cessna Skyhawk in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. We have a longer video today because we are staying in the pattern, focusing on flying soft field takeoffs and landings. I'll talk about what those are, and we'll see if we can fly them in the sim just like we do in real life. It should be an awesome and fun flight, so let's hop into the pilot's seat and get started. Fairways is located in Oregon, 16 miles south of Portland. It has 2 grass strips, which is why we'll be doing soft field takeoffs today. This is freeware offered by Orbx, so check out the video details so that you too can download it. It's a great little airport, and it even has the power lines and obstructions at each end modeled to give you a little bit of challenge on takeoff and landing. Since we're simulating real life, let's play it by the book. So our papers are on board, control wheel locks are removed, the mags are off, and our circuit breakers are in. Our trim is set to take off. We'll go down to our fuel selector and rotate it through each position and then set it back to both. We'll check that the prop is clear. Then we'll turn the master on. We'll check our fuel gauges. So fuel gauge left and right. We have half a tank, which is fine for pattern work. Next we'll head down to our flaps and we'll get those extended for the walkaround. There we go. Now we'll head over to our lights and we're going to turn on all of the lights plus the pitot heat. Those are on, so let's hop out the door and we'll do a quick walk around so we can turn the lights off. So left strobe and nav light are functional. Tail beacon is working. Tail nav light is not working and not modeled. Right strobe and nav light are functional. Landing and taxi light are working, and the pitot probe is hot. So let's hop back into the airplane and we'll get all of those lights back off so that we don't kill the battery. And now we can turn off the battery and the alternator. Hop back outside for the walk around. So the baggage door is secure, the empennage looks good, no rivets are missing, no cracks. If we look at the horizontal left stabilizer, that's in good shape. If we look at the left elevator, that moves freely up and down, and the rudder moves freely. Our antennas are intact. The right rudder moves freely, and the trim tab is level. Our right horizontal stabilizer is in good shape. The right empennage looks good. Our flaps are secure. Our ailerons move freely and have no missing screws. The right lights look good. The strut and leading surfaces of the right wing look good. Tire is healthy. We'll go up here and pull our fuel sample. It's blue with no contamination. We'll go down to this little step here and the step on the strut. Step up onto them and climb up to the fuel tank. Open it up, dip in our sampler and check the fuel. Now we'll check the oil and we've got the minimum required. Down to the nose wheel, that looks good. The muffler is also in good shape. The filter is clear. Now we'll head up to the spinner, that looks good. The prop has no nicks on the top or the bottom. We'll check the belt here inside of the engine. The static port is clear. Our wing, leading surface, and strut look good. Our tires are healthy. We'll head up underneath the wing and sample the fuel again. That's blue with no contamination. Now we'll climb up and measure the amount of fuel inside of the fuel tank. Climb back down. We will check the pitot tube for the drainage holes being clear. The stall warning is there and the lights look good. The left wing lights look good. The left ailerons move freely and the left flaps are secure. Now we can climb back into the aircraft. Before start checklist, the pre-flight inspection is complete. You are my passengers, so I'll give you a passenger brief. Please keep your seatbelts on for the entire flight. They're actually required for takeoff, taxi, and landing, but we've got a short flight, so we'll keep them on while we're in the pattern. They fasten like a lap seatbelt on your lap, and there's a peg that it clicks into for the shoulder harness. Air is right in front of you. If you get too cold, you can turn on the air. It works just like a car's heater. In the event of a fire, we will land and exit the aircraft. There's a fire extinguisher on the left side underneath my seat. The emergency exit is your door or my door. If we can't get the doors open, just push the door windows out. They're just made of plexi. During takeoff and landing, I need to focus, so we won't talk during that time. However, if you do see something that's important to the flight, be sure to point it out to me. And lastly are your questions. No questions? Awesome, let's get started. Okay, we've both got our seatbelts adjusted to where we want and they are locked in place, and I see we both got our seatbelts on and clicked in. Our parking brake is set, our circuit breakers are in. Next we'll turn on our beacon. We're flying during the day, so nav lights are not required. Our fuel selector is to both. We'll bring on the battery master and alternator, but first we'll call clear prop. Next we'll turn on the fuel pump. Bring the mixture into full rich until fuel flow peaks. Bring the mixture back to idle cutoff. Turn the fuel pump off. And we need to bring that in a little bit for the simulator to start, since it won't start at idle cutoff. Get our feet on the brakes, make sure the prop is still cleared. Hands on the keys, and we'll get ignition. All right, bring the mixture in and our throttle up to 1000 RPM. Okay, we'll check that we do have oil pressure, which is on the left there, and we do. Now we'll head down here and we'll lean the mixture for ground operations so we don't foul the spark plugs. And next we can get bus 1 and bus 2 for avionics on, which will let us switch over to our headsets. Alright, headsets on. How do you hear? Loud and clear for me. This is my real aviation headset. These are the DeltaZulus. I've done a review of them actually on this channel, and they plug right into the computer via USB, so you can use them for flight simming, which is fantastic. So as our Garmin goes through its boot up routines, we've got the transponder here set to standby, squawking VFR 1200. And next, we're going to head down and get our flaps back up from the pre-flight walk-around. Flaps are coming up. Alright, so in real life, the Garmin boot ups look just like this. When you hit OK, it will have you verify half up, half left on the course deviation indicators. That is not modeled in the sim, but the OBS is modeled, so we also turn it to a OBS heading of 030, make sure that's what it's reading on the Garmin, which it is. We'll do the same thing for radio 2. That looks good, so we'll hit OK. And now it needs to acquire all of the satellites. I love that this is modeled. While it's doing that, we'll head over to the instruments and get them all set up. So we'll get our attitude indicator set. We'll get our altimeter set. Our heading indicator is set to compass, and we'll turn the heading bug to the runway we intend to use, which is 34, and we'll verify that the vertical speed indicator is level, which it is. Now we'll head down to our lights, and we'll get the taxi light on in prep for taxi. And I think the avionics should be booted up now. That looks good, so let's start dialing in our frequencies. Fairways is a private field and does not have a published CTAF frequency. And I can't recall if there's no CTAF frequency published if you use 122.7 or 122.9. We'll look it up in the AIM, but for now I'll dial 122.7 for our radio 1. Heading down to radio 2, we'll put in guard, which is 121.5. Guard is the emergency frequency that ATC monitors in case we have a problem. Next, we'll use a GPS trick to help us fly the pattern. So we'll go to our nearest airport page and bring up our field. And once we find Fairway, then we'll do a direct enter. When we go back to the main nav page in the GPS, we'll see that the airport will highlight magenta, showing that it is our destination. And the trick is to toggle it out of GPS mode into OBS mode. That will let us change the line that's on the screen by using the course deviation indicator. So if we dial in our runway heading of 340, then that line will be parallel to our runway. Fairway traffic, Skyhawk 5207 Quebec, taxi from the ramp to runway 34, hold short, fairway. As we start moving, I'll test my brakes, and then we'll verify all of our gauges are turning in the right directions. There we go, brakes are working, and let's continue. So we are doing a soft field takeoff and landing. That's because we're on a grass strip, and those techniques are all about protecting the nose wheel. The last thing we want is for the nose wheel to catch some sort of divot in the grass during rollout and landing, or to sink into the grass and collapse the nose gear or cartwheel the airplane forward. So as we do this, we're going to use some special techniques to try to keep the weight off the nose wheel as much as possible. And guys, this is for entertainment purposes only. This is not real-world flight instruction. I am not a flight instructor. This is for simulator use only. Alright, we're approaching the end of 3-4, so we're going to stop here, and I think I'm going to stay parallel to the buildings so my prop wash doesn't blow debris into them during the run-up. For our run-up, our flight controls are free and correct. Our airspeed indicates 0, our attitude indicator is set, our altimeter is set, turn and slip indicator is level, heading indicator is set to magnetic compass, VSI reads level. No flaps for this takeoff. Fuel quantity left and right reads half a tank, same as I measured up on the wings. We'll come down here and we'll get our mixture into full rich. Our trim is set for takeoff. Next we'll bring the throttle up to 1700 and do the mag check. Okay, we'll turn our key over to mag left. I can see and hear the drop. Go back to mag both. Comes back up. Key over to mag right. Again, I can see and hear the drop, and it's the same amount as mag left. We'll go back to mag both. We'll check our suction gauge. Suction is in the green. Oil pressure is in the green. Oil temperature is in the green. Ammeter shows that it's charging the battery. And we like to test that, so I'm going to head down to the switches here. We'll turn on the pitot heat to put a load on the system. And you can see that the amps drop a little bit there and come back up. So that looks good. Next we'll bring the throttle to idle and we'll make sure that the engine doesn't quit. I did check the aim, and section 4-1-2 has 122.9 as the default CTAF frequency if none is published. So we'll set our avionics up to that and verify that everything is set up. Okay, takeoff brief. We are doing a soft field takeoff from runway 34, no flaps. We have 2,900 feet to work with. See anything we don't like on the ground, throttle idle, feet on the brakes, come to a stop. After takeoff, if we have an engine failure before turning crosswind, we're going to pitch for 65 knots, which is best glide in this aircraft, and land straight ahead. Engine failure after crosswind, we are remaining in the pattern, so we'll do an engine out landing from the pattern. We're doing one lap around the pattern, and then we're doing a soft field landing and calling it a day. I am the pilot in command. We'll head down to our switches. We'll turn off the taxi light, turn on the landing light, and now it's time to turn on the strobes. Next we'll head over to our transponder and we'll get it into alt reporting mode. Make sure the parking brake is off. We'll check that our doors and windows are secure. I have had both doors and windows pop open in flight, so we'll make sure that those are latched. Fairways traffic, Skyhawk 07 Quebec, departing runway 34, remaining in the pattern, Fairways. Alright, we're taxiing on grass, so our goal is not to stop and not use the brakes. So we're going to keep on rolling as we line up here. And as we do, I'm pulling back on the controls, so you can see the elevator going up. That's going to lift the front of the nose up and keep as much weight possible off of the front landing gear. Because we're in ground effect, we can become airborne really before we're ready to fly, and us pulling back on the controls is going to do just that. So we're going to need to level back out once we pop off the ground and pick up enough speed so that when we exit ground effect, we don't fall out of the sky. This involves pushing the nose back down after popping up, which is actually a bit uncomfortable for a pilot because you never push the nose down when you're close to the ground. But we did it! So now we can climb out as normal. We are passing the intersecting runway here, and we've got some power lines to clear, but the runway was long enough and we've got plenty of performance to be able to clear them without doing a short field takeoff. And there they are! Field elevation was around 500 feet, so I want to be 500 to 700 feet above that before I do my crosswind turn. The traffic pattern for Fairways is left traffic, so we'll be making all left turns. So our first turn here is going to be a left onto the crosswind, and we're coming up on it now. Pattern altitude is 1,000 feet above field elevation for this airport, so we are climbing to 1,500, and we're probably going to hit that someplace after the crosswind turn before turning downwind. So we'll level out and power back to around 2,000 RPMs when we reach that altitude. And here we are. So you can hear that I've pulled the power back on the engine, and we're going to push the nose down here, level out, and get ourselves all configured for the downwind. Now we're going to turn left onto the downwind and fly parallel to the runway. I'll tell you a story while we're doing that. So the very first time my instructor let me attempt to do the landing, I tried to do the landing the way I'd been flying in the simulator, and the way I'd been flying in the simulator was to flare, pull power, and then push the nose down to bring the aircraft down onto the runway. Remember how I said pushing the nose down is bad? Our lives flashed before our eyes briefly, and I learned never do that. He grabbed the controls, we did a go around, and lesson learned. But now I got to the point where we're doing soft field landings, and it starts with, okay, right after takeoff, push the nose down, and I'll tell you, it was really hard to overcome the training not to push the nose down. Okay, you can see that we're set up really nicely on the downwind here. We've got the field about halfway up the strut, which is just where we want it for proper spacing. We're coming to beam the numbers, so I'm pulling back the power, and I've dropped in the first notch of flaps for flap 10, and we're getting ready to make our base turn. Fairways traffic, Skyhawk 07 Quebec, left base, runway 34, full stop, Fairways. The base leg is where I'm getting all my speeds sorted out so that I can glide in at a constant rate and descent rate. I put in my second notch of flaps here usually, and I'm aiming to be about 500 feet above ground when I reach the base of the final turn. Fairways traffic, Skyhawk 07 Quebec, final, runway 34, full stop, Fairways. Alright, as we roll out from final here and get all lined up, I will drop in my next notch of flaps. I'll make some power adjustments here to get the descent rate I want to arrive at the spot I want on the runway. We've got some trees and power lines that are obstructions at the end of the runway, so we got to make sure we keep in enough power to go over those. There they go, there's the trees, there's the power lines, and we can cut it. Landing here is going to be the reverse of what we did for takeoff, so we are doing a normal landing, except we're going to fly in ground effect and start pulling the nose up. Put in a little bit of power to keep the nose up and land on the mains. There's a little bit of power. There goes the mains. We're popping a wheelie. Nose is coming down. And now we can pull the power and settle into the nose, but still keep pulling back on those flight controls to keep the weight off of it. That works surprisingly well in the sim. So now we're going to turn around and back taxi on runway 34. Fairways traffic, Skyhawk 07 Quebec, back taxi, runway 34 to the ramp, Fairways. This is actually a nice grass strip. I like that it's got two different grass strips to work with and some challenges with obstructions at both ends. For freeware, you should check it out. Okay, we're going to vacate the runway up here. As soon as we're clear, we'll announce that we're clear, and we'll do our after landing checklist. Fairways traffic, Skyhawk 07 Quebec, clear runway 34, Fairways. After landing checklist, mixture is lean, flaps are up, our trim is set back for takeoff. Next we'll head over to the lights, and we can turn off the landing light and the strobes at this point. And we'll get our transponder to standby. Begin shutdown checklist, parking brake is off, our avionics are off, which will also kill our headset, so we'll switch to our other mic. Bring the throttle to 1000 RPM. And then we'll bring the mixture to idle cutoff. Turn the mags off. Take out the key, we'll put it on the dash. We always leave the beacon on so you can see if you forgot to turn off the master, and now we'll turn the master off. A little bit of a longer video and more technical, but that was a lot of fun. It was pretty close to how it works in real life. I find that it's very hard to do finesse things in the sim because it's very numb and you don't have any physical feedback. So, you know, leveling out just above the ground and ground effect is very hard in the sim. I'd say harder than it is in real life. So it was nice to see that we could pull that off in the simulator. I hope you enjoyed content like this. If you do, be sure to click that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, as always, for flying along with me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.